I'm 69 years old and I have 3 children who want nothing to do with me. And the worst part? I did this to myself by making the same mistake over and over for 40 years. My name is Patricia, but everyone calls me Pat. I'm 69 and I haven't spoken to any of my children in over 2 years. My daughter Rebecca hasn't returned my calls in 3 years. My son Michael told me 5 years ago he needed space and never came back. My youngest Sarah sends a text on my birthday and that's it. I have 6 grandchildren I've never met. And it's all my fault because I kept doing one thing that pushed them further and further away until they were gone completely. I need to tell you about this because I see parents making the same mistake I made, and they don't realize what they're doing until it's too late, until their kids are grown and gone and want nothing to do with them. And then they're sitting alone wondering what went wrong, just like I am. Let me start at the beginning so you understand how this happened. I got married in 1975 when I was 22 years old. His name was Tom. We dated for 2 years. He was a good man, hardworking, reliable, wanted a family. We bought a small house in Pennsylvania and started our life together. I got pregnant right away, had Rebecca in 1976 when I was 23. Michael came in 1978, Sarah in 1982, 3 kids in 6 years. I was a stay-at-home mum. Tom worked as a contractor. Money was tight, but we managed. I loved my kids when they were little, loved taking care of them. But I also had very specific ideas about how children should be raised. I'd grown up with strict parents. They had rules and expectations and you followed them, no questions asked. That's how I thought parenting worked. So that's what I did with my kids. I had rules, lots of rules, about everything, when they could eat, what they could eat, when they had to go to bed, what they could wear, who they could be friends with, what activities they could do, how they should act, what they should say. Everything was controlled. I told myself I was being a good mother, that kids need structure and discipline, that letting them do whatever they want would ruin them. I was protecting them, teaching them, preparing them for the real world. But really I was controlling them, every aspect of their lives, and I couldn't stop. Rebecca was a quiet kid, sensitive, liked to read and draw, but I thought she needed to be more social, more outgoing. So I'd push her to join sports teams and clubs she didn't want to join, force her to go to birthday parties and social events when she just wanted to stay home with a book. She'd tell me she didn't like soccer or dance class or whatever activity I'd signed her up for, and I'd tell her she had to stick with it, that quitting wasn't an option, that she needed to learn to push through things even when they were hard. I thought I was teaching her perseverance. Really, I was teaching her that her feelings didn't matter, that what she wanted wasn't important, that my vision of who she should be was more important than who she actually was. Michael was different, more energetic, more defiant. He'd push back against my rules, question why things had to be a certain way, and I'd shut him down, tell him because I said so, that I was the parent and he was the child, and that's how it worked. We'd fight constantly. He'd want to do something his way, and I'd insist on my way. He'd argue and I'd punish him, take away privileges, ground him, make him sit in his room, anything to get him to comply, to break that defiant streak. I told myself I was teaching him respect for authority. Really, I was teaching him that our relationship was based on power and control instead of love and understanding. Sarah was the youngest, and by the time she came along, I was even more rigid. I'd figured out my system, had my rules locked in. She got the most controlled version of my parenting. Everything about her life was managed. Her schedule, her friends, her activities, her appearance. I picked out her clothes every day until she was 13, wouldn't let her choose her own hairstyle, monitored everything she ate, decided what hobbies she could pursue. I thought I was giving her structure. Really, I was suffocating her. The teenage years were brutal. Rebecca became withdrawn, stopped talking to me about anything real, would just say fine when I asked how she was, stayed in her room as much as possible. I told myself it was normal teenage behavior, that she'd grow out of it. Michael became openly hostile. We'd fight about everything: his grades, his friends, his attitude, his appearance, his music, everything. The house was a war zone. Tom would try to mediate, but I'd tell him to back off, that I had it under control, that Michael just needed firmer boundaries. Sarah learned early to just go along with everything, became agreeable on the surface, but I could see the resentment building underneath. She'd do what I told her to do, but there was no warmth, no real connection. I knew something was wrong, knew my relationships with my kids weren't what they should be, but I couldn't see that I was the problem. I thought they were the problem, that they were being difficult, ungrateful, that they didn't appreciate everything I did for them. Rebecca left for college in 1994 when she was 18. Went to a school 8 hours away. I was hurt that she chose somewhere so far from home. She said she wanted to experience a different part of the country. Really, she wanted to get as far from me as possible. She rarely came home, Christmas and sometimes summer, and when she did come home, she'd spend most of the time with friends or locked in her room. We'd have stiff, awkward conversations. I'd ask about school, and she'd give me one-word answers. I'd criticize her choices. Her major was impractical. Her boyfriend wasn't good enough. She wasn't taking advantage of opportunities. She was wasting her potential. I thought I was giving helpful advice. Really, I was just continuing to control and criticize. She graduated in 1998 and got a job in California, moved across the country, called maybe once a month. The calls were brief, surface level. She'd tell me the basic facts of her life, but nothing real, nothing deep. I'd complain to Tom that Rebecca never called, that she didn't care about her family. He'd say maybe I should call her more, be more interested in her life. Instead of just criticizing, I'd get defensive, say I was just trying to help her, that she was too sensitive. Michael left for college in 1996, also chose a school far away. He was even worse about staying in touch, would go months without calling. And when we did talk, it would end in an argument within minutes. I'd ask about his life, and he'd give me minimal information. I'd push for more details, and he'd get angry, tell me to stop interrogating him. He graduated and moved to Colorado, started working in outdoor recreation, became a ski instructor. I was horrified, told him he was wasting his degree, that he needed a real career, that he was being irresponsible. He stopped calling after that. For a whole year I didn't hear from him. Finally I called him and he answered. I started in immediately about how worried I'd been, how he should be more considerate, how he needed to grow up and get serious about his life. He told me he didn't want to talk to me if every conversation was going to be me telling him what he was doing wrong. I said I was his mother, and I had a right to give him guidance. He said guidance would be welcome, but all I ever did was criticize and control. I hung up on him. Didn't talk to him for another 6 months. Sarah left for college in 2000. went to a school 3 hours away, close enough to come home on weekends, but she never did. She'd call once a week like clockwork, Sunday evenings at 7 p.m, and the calls were exactly 5 minutes long. She'd give me an update like she was giving a report. Then she'd say she had to go study and hang up. I could feel her pulling away, but I didn't know how to stop it. Or maybe I did know, but I wasn't willing to change. After college, Sarah moved to Boston, got engaged to a man named David, announced it over the phone, didn't ask me to help plan the wedding, didn't ask my opinion on anything, just told me the date and said I'd get an invitation. I was hurt. Said she was shutting me out. She said she wasn't shutting me out, she was just planning her own wedding. I said a daughter should want her mother involved. She said she wanted to do it her way, without dealing with my criticism. We fought. I told her she was being selfish. She said I'd never been happy with any of her choices, so why would she involve me in this one? I said that wasn't true. She hung up. I didn't speak to her for 3 months. She didn't call. Finally, Tom convinced me to reach out, to apologize. I called and left a voicemail saying I was sorry and that I'd like to be part of the wedding planning if she'd let me. She never called back. 2 weeks later, I got a wedding invitation in the mail. Formal, no personal note, just the invitation. I went to the wedding. It was beautiful. Sarah looked happy. She was polite to me but distant, like I was a guest instead of her mother. I tried to talk to her, to have a real conversation, but she kept moving away, kept being busy with other people. After the wedding, she moved even further away emotionally, would send short update emails every few months, never called, never visited. Rebecca got married in 2005, also didn't involve me in the planning, also kept me at arm's length. She was living in Los Angeles by then, had a career in marketing, was doing well for herself, but we barely had a relationship. She had her first child in 2007, my first grandchild, a daughter named Emma. Rebecca sent me a birth announcement and some photos. That's how I found out. Not a phone call, not an invitation to come meet the baby, just an announcement in the mail. I called and asked when I could come visit. She said she'd let me know when things settled down. That never happened. She kept putting me off. Finally, I just booked a flight and told her I was coming. I stayed for 3 days. It was awful. Rebecca was tense the whole time. I couldn't help myself. I kept giving her advice about the baby, about how she should be doing things differently, how she was holding her wrong, how she shouldn't be nursing on demand, how she needed to establish a routine. Rebecca barely spoke to me. On the 3rd day, she asked me to leave a day early, said she was exhausted and needed space. I was hurt, but I left, got a hotel for the night, and flew home the next day. After that, Rebecca stopped responding to my calls, would send brief text messages saying she was busy with the baby. Months would go by with no contact. She had 2 more children. I got birth announcements in the mail for both of them. Never met them. Michael got married in 2010. Didn't tell me until after it happened. Just sent an email saying he and his girlfriend had gotten married at a courthouse. No ceremony. No guests. I was devastated. I called him crying. Asked why he'd shut me out. He said he didn't shut me out. He just didn't want me at his wedding because every time we were together I made him miserable. He said every conversation with me left him feeling like he wasn't good enough. Like nothing he did was ever right. I tried to defend myself. Said I only wanted the best for him. He said wanting the best for someone doesn't mean controlling every aspect of their life, doesn't mean criticizing every choice they make. I told him he was being oversensitive, that he needed to stop holding grudges. He said he wasn't holding grudges, he was setting boundaries, and his boundary was that he didn't want me in his life if I couldn't accept him as he was instead of constantly trying to make him into someone else. I didn't talk to him for 2 years after that. Sarah had her first child in 2012, a son. I got a text message with a photo, that's it. When I called to congratulate her, she was cold. Said thank you and that she had to go. I asked when I could come visit. She said she'd let me know. Never did. I'd send gifts for holidays. She'd send brief thank you texts, no photos, no updates, nothing. By 2015, I barely had relationships with any of my children. Rebecca would send a Christmas card with family photos. That's how I saw what my grandchildren looked like. Michael sent nothing. Sarah sent occasional texts, but wouldn't talk on the phone. I'd complained to Tom about how they'd all abandoned me, how they were ungrateful, how I'd sacrificed everything for them, and this is how they treated me. Tom would try to tell me that maybe I needed to look at my own behavior, that maybe there were reasons they were keeping their distance. I didn't want to hear it. Blamed them. Blamed their spouses for turning them against me. Blamed society for teaching kids they didn't owe their parents anything. Blamed everything except myself. Tom died in 2018, heart attack. He was 65, sudden. All 3 kids came to the funeral. It was the first time I'd seen them all together in years. They were polite but distant. Stayed for the funeral and the immediate aftermath. Left as soon as they could. I was devastated, not just because Tom died, but because I realized I'd lost my children. And now I'd lost my husband too. I was completely alone. After the funeral, I tried to rebuild relationships with them. Called more often, sent more messages, but they kept me at arm's length. Would respond but briefly, wouldn't engage in real conversations. I got more desperate, started showing up unannounced, flew to Los Angeles and showed up at Rebecca's house. She was shocked, upset, said I couldn't just show up without warning. I said I was her mother and I had a right to see her. She asked me to leave. I refused, started crying, said I just wanted to be part of her life. She said I could be part of her life if I respected her boundaries. I said I was respecting her boundaries. She said no, I was pushing past every boundary she'd ever set. We fought. I said things I regret, called her ungrateful, said she was a terrible daughter, that she owed me more than this, that I'd given up everything for her and her siblings, and this is how she repaid me. She asked me to leave and not come back. I left, flew home, didn't hear from her again. I did the same thing with Sarah. Showed up at her house in Boston. Same result. She asked me to leave. We fought. I said terrible things. She told me not to contact her anymore. Michael, I didn't even try. Knew he'd probably call the police if I showed up. That was 2 years ago. I'm 69 now. I sit in this house alone every day. I have 3 children and 6 grandchildren, and none of them speak to me. Rebecca blocked my number. Sarah doesn't respond to anything I send. Michael hasn't responded in years, and I finally had to face the truth. This is my fault. I did this. Not all at once, but over 40 years of making the same mistake over and over. The mistake was thinking love meant control. Thinking being a good mother meant managing every aspect of their lives. Thinking I knew better than they did about what they needed, what they should want, who they should be. I never let them be themselves, never accepted them as they were. Every conversation was me trying to fix them, change them, mold them into what I thought they should be. And eventually they couldn't take it anymore. They didn't cut me off because they're ungrateful or selfish or because their spouses turned them against me. They cut me off because I made them feel like they were never good enough, like nothing they did was ever right, like my approval was always just out of reach. And I kept doing it, even when they were adults, even when they had their own families. I couldn't stop trying to control them, couldn't stop criticizing, couldn't respect their choices or their boundaries or their autonomy. I drove them away, step by step, year by year, until there was nothing left. I think about the moments I could have changed course, the times they tried to tell me how they felt and I dismissed them, the times they set boundaries and I pushed past them, the times they asked me to stop and I told them they were being too sensitive. I had so many chances to do things differently, to listen instead of lecture, to accept instead of criticize, to support instead of control, and I didn't take any of them. Now I'm 69 years old. I live alone in a house that used to be full of family. I have children who don't speak to me, and grandchildren I've never met, and I have to live with knowing I did this to myself. I see parents doing the same thing, trying to control their adult children, criticizing their choices, pushing past boundaries, not respecting them as separate people with their own lives, and I want to tell them to stop, to learn from my mistakes before it's too late, because once you've pushed them too far, you can't undo it. Once they've had enough and cut you off, you might never get them back, and you'll spend your final years alone, drowning in regret for all the ways you could have done things differently. If I could go back, I'd do everything different. I'd let Rebecca be herself, quiet and sensitive and creative. I'd support her interests instead of trying to make her into someone else. I'd let Michael have his independence and his defiance. I'd see those qualities as strengths instead of problems to be fixed. I'd have conversations with him instead of power struggles. I'd let Sarah make her own choices, her own mistakes, her own life. I'd be there to support her, but not to control her. I'd accept them as they were instead of constantly trying to change them. I'd respect their boundaries. I'd listen when they told me I was hurting them instead of getting defensive. But I can't go back. I can only move forward knowing what I destroyed and will never get back. If you're a parent reading this, please learn from me. Your children are not extensions of you. They're separate people with their own thoughts and feelings and dreams. Your job isn't to control them or mold them into what you think they should be. Your job is to love them as they are. Accept their choices even when you don't agree. Respect their boundaries even when it hurts. Listen to them when they tell you you're hurting them instead of defending yourself. Because if you don't, you might end up like me, alone at 69, cut off from everyone you love, living with regret so heavy you can barely breathe. I'm 69, and my children don't speak to me because I spent 40 years trying to control them instead of just loving them. Don't make my mistake. Subscribe if this made you think about your relationships differently.